Okay, being 7 o'clock, do I have a motion to open tonight's meeting?
Motion to open, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, tonight's meeting is open. Good evening, everybody. This is the meeting of the Finance Committee. It's Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. This meeting is being video recorded, and we are also doing Zoom as well tonight. Before we start our meeting, I'd like to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so we have some budget hearings tonight that we're going to go over. We're going to do them in order. So we have the Board of Health here, Conservation Commission, and Golf Department. So Board of Health is going to be going first. We have our health agent, Mr. Joe Correa, and Mr. Robert Medeiros, who's also on the Board of Health as well. And they're going to be presenting their budget to us tonight.
Good evening, members of the board. I am Joe Correa, the health agent. Really, we just have one specific line item. We work really hard to try not to go above, ever raise the budget more than it needs to be. This year, unfortunately, the fiscal 22 is just as much as coming up here with fiscal 23. We ran into a bit of a problem with COVID-19, which I did give you a memo in regards to what was going on. I mean, the contact tracing really put our nurses to task with a lot of extra time. We were able to use the contact tracing collaborative, which was set up by the state, and we were able to kick a lot of our contact tracing up to them. But at the end of November, the state cut them out. So as much as we were hoping that our budget wasn't going to be blown for fiscal 22, it was going to be a little bit higher. We had actually, the Board of Health had been able to receive some grants to offset some of the extra expenses. But between the fact that the contact tracing collaborative ended or was stopped by the department by the governor, and the fact that the CDC changed the time, they dropped everything down from 10 days to 5 days, but they also put a little caveat there that said that everybody had to get tested after 5 days. So as much as it's great to get tested and be tested, and we have the EMS that really worked hard for us, and it also creates more contact tracing. The more positives we get or we find, the more that we have to trace those individuals that had contact with anybody that was positive. So it really kicked us up this year. The way that we're looking at it right now, we're projecting double our budget. Our budget is $13,000. It has been for at least the last 13 years. This year, we're looking at a double. Right now, we've been able to offset some of it. It'll be we're going to be looking for a reserve fund transfer of about $6,000. We were able to offset the full amount of that by $7,000 with a grant that we had. But being fiscally responsible, we have to look at next year. Not knowing what's going to happen with COVID, it seems as though it's starting to go away. But looking at the fact that we really need to ask for that extra $13,000. Other than that, salaries we've left the same until a union contract is signed and we decide on if there's going to be a COLA. Everything else is maintained the same, except I did find out today that we maintain our copier. We bought our own copier machine. We maintain our own copier. There's a photocopier supply that we've had that we probably are going to be able to merge that in with the town and not have to do that. So I'm expecting that we're going to be able to take that right out this year. We're going to get to. I just found that out tonight. So we have Nick Monticello. Nick's working on it. So I think it's going to work out. Well, it'll be a little savings anyways. And the thing is just as a thought, towards the summer months, when everybody starts to get outside, there tends to be less positives. So, again, we have to think that $13,000 addition for $26,000 next year is the right thing to do, but maybe we won't have to use it, and we'll be able to give it back to you come the following year.
Well, I think we'd rather have you do it this way than it coming back to us for a reserve fund transfer.
Exactly.
So I think doing it this way probably makes the most sense. And then you already answered the question I was going to have for you with regards to any, state funding or federal funding or grants that could help offset some of this, but you've already answered that, so. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Correa with regards to the budget?
Cut and dry.
No, I'm sorry, just one question. There's no increases to salaries. If that's under contract or being negotiated. Oh, sorry.
That will, once that has been determined, you will get an article to fund the contract,
Gotcha.
and within that article will be the money for that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. No other questions for Mr. Correa?
No.
Thank you. I appreciate providing the two separate budgets the way you did. Yeah, that's what we asked, and we appreciate that, and the budget looks pretty clean. And if we have any questions prior to us voting on it, we'll be in touch, but I don't anticipate anything like that. So thank you.
We are all available.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so next hearing is the Conservation Commission. I believe they are remote, so it's Mr. Pat Hannon, our conservation agent. Good evening, Pat.
Good evening.
So whenever you're ready to go, you can go over your budget, highlight the areas where you have increases or significant decreases. That'd be great.
So, this is a little confusing because I took over on July 15th as a part-time conservation agent, where the job had been budgeted for a full-time conservation agent. My salary is $33,401.20, according to Melissa. I'm reading her email now, and there's a stormwater agent salary as well that was being paid through planning, because the planning board was the stormwater authority. That authority was recently transferred to the Conservation Commission by the planning board. And then if you look at page 9 of the recommended budget for 2022, there was money being budgeted for a stormwater MS4 permit. In 19, it was $6,824. In 20, it was $188. I'm sorry, the actual, they voted $8,500 at town meeting. And then for 22, $12,000. The money was never spent in 2019, it was turned back. The stormwater work wasn't done. And then in 2020, the stormwater work wasn't done, and the 2021 money, that work wasn't done, and that money was turned back as well. So we're behind the 8 ball on stormwater compliance with EPA for the town of Acushnet. We have a consultant, Conical Engineers, that does the MS4 work for DCR and some other municipalities. And they gave us a price of $35,000 to bring us into full compliance by the end of our 23 budget season. So my $12,000 that I had will be gone in the next couple of months. We're doing stormwater pollution prevention plans for all the town buildings and parking lots that were acquired. And I'm gonna need $23,000 to finish the work. And if we don't finish the work, we are right now under an enforcement action for being behind the 8 ball on this, and we could wind up with a $25,000 to $100,000 penalty for this. So we've budgeted more than that in the last few years and didn't spend it. So I think 35 grand is a really good deal for the town to clean that up. There's no changes in, clothing allowances or communications or overtime or any of that. I did meet with Mr. Kelly, town administrator, today, and the Conservation Commission has a Wetlands Protection Act fund where we get fees from everyone who applies for a notice of intent with the town. We have $38,000 in that account, and that money is actually designated by DEP to be used towards salaries for people that work for wetlands. So I proposed to Mr. Kelly that we take some money out of that budget, out of that account, I'm sorry, and add it to the budget for our clerk. I have a senior clerk who's been with the town for 33 years. And now that we've taken on, and she works in my department 4 hours a day, and then she works at the Board of Health 3 hours in the afternoon. She's a 35-hour employee. So because we took on this stormwater and we're taking on 4 years worth of stormwater work, she's going to need to be in the conservation office full-time. And there was an effort last year to move her out of the Board of Health for the 3 hours and put her into conservation full-time. And that still would have resulted in a reduction in salaries because Marilee was gone as a full-time employee. But once I realized how much money was in the Wetlands Protection Act fund, it made sense to bring Joanne over on a full-time basis, make her a administrative assistant, and pick a pay grade that wasn't the lowest pay grade because it's actually less money than the senior clerk that she's been for the last God knows how many years. And talking to Mr. Kelly today, it would be a $3,000, roughly $3,000 increase in salary to pick up all of this stormwater work as an administrative assistant. That would come out of the Wetlands Protection Act money, wouldn't come out of the general budget. And it certainly would not deplete that fund in any way, just taking $3,000 a year out of it. The Conservation Commission, prior to me arriving in July, was doing a lot of their work as resource area delineations, and those only charged a $50 fee versus the notices of intent, which are in the $500 to $1,000. We're missing out on a lot of revenue by taking that shortcut. The other side of it on stormwater is the town has a stormwater bylaw and a stormwater regulation, and the planning board was supposed to set fees for the stormwater bylaw for inspections, violations, and permits, and that was never done since 2007. So we missed a lot of revenue since 2007. 4 weeks ago, I got the Conservation Commission, acting as the stormwater authority, to approve fees for stormwater. It's now $600 for a stormwater permit. It's $100 for an inspection. It's $100 for a violation inspection. And that will go into to that revolver, which currently has a $2,500 limit that I want to increase to $10,000 so that we can pay our stormwater engineer out of that and not take money out of the general budget for our MS4 requirements either. These should be self-funding situations once we get this on track. So we can save some significant money this year, and next year we should be able to double down on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just to, first of all, I haven't talked to the Board of Selectmen at all about this restructuring, so I'll be briefing them at their next meeting as far as the bones of the request. But just for some informational purposes, one of my previous communities, we had we ignored the MS4 or program orders. We ended up having a consent decree, for lack of a better term, of $250,000 a year to upgrade, study, change everything from what went into the rivers and ponds in town. DEP came in and did a micro investigation. And the town was at one point going to go up to $400,000. To get ahead of your MS4 is really important. And to get all that done, so you don't have to go into a consent decree, is really important, because when DEP and the EPA come in, they will say, you've got phosphorus in this body of water, you're gonna clean up the whole thing, and you're gonna do it within a short period of time. So you don't wanna be faced with that. We had to go to the state and borrow $500,000 a year just to make up for what we didn't do for 10 years before I got to the municipality. And just as in most municipalities I've been in, we have gone to the fund for to help out with the clerical cost of the Conservation Commission. So it's not something that is unusual. It's done in almost every town.
The wetlands fund you're referring to?
Yes.
That's a lot.
I brought it up a year ago. With the prior town administrator, and it just kind of fell on deaf ears. That's a lot of money to have in your wetlands account. And just so you know, I walk in your shoes. I'm a finance committee member where I live, and I'm very focused on new growth, and efficiency each year. We look for 15% increases in efficiency in our departments year over year at budget time. We don't always get it, but sometimes we do. So it's ingrained in me that as I'm doing my job, I'm trying to take more off of the permitting side and take the burden off of the taxpayer. That's the other side of my operation here.
Well, thanks for providing us with all this this is new information for us with regards to the permitting.
Yep.
But it sounds quite important, and I think it's something that we're going to definitely need to be compliant with. And we're going to definitely need to fund this to make sure that we're not paying any exorbitant fines that were discussed. So
The last thing we want is an unfunded mandate.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We don't like mandates.
Is this
Well,
something
I
that
don't
gets
like
reviewed
mandates.
by the state every year with the towns reporting of this stuff? Or?
You are supposed to issue a report, and the town administrator is supposed to certify that inspections are done, that the work is done, and under pains and penalty.
Right.
And so I don't know what has been done in the past, but I'm not one that, if it's not done, that I'm just going to sign a document. I want proof that it has been done.
I just don't understand how we missed this for several years,
I don't know.
how it got overlooked.
Oh, the money went back into the budget, so they had to know they missed it, and that's been my heartburn when I discovered that, there was money available to do it. And what happened in '21, I'm told, is that there was only $18,000 available. The stormwater agent needed $22,000. Julie didn't want to give it to her, so she said, "The heck with it, I'm not going to do any of the work." And she didn't do it. And the money went back into it got turned back. So we're lucky that we can get this done for $35,000 and not being a jackpot.
So after this 35,000, let's say yearly, it goes back to the 12,000? Is that what you?
It'll be less than that. It'll be minimal. It depends how radical EPA gets in, trying to save the bay.
Right.
But currently, it would just be, minor modifications or a change in a level for suspended solids and discharges, something like that. But we're basically doing the whole thing from scratch here. We were using the Mass Maritime Academy, and they were only able to test 2 manholes a day, and we're gonna do it ourselves, and we can test 12 manholes a day. So.
Thank you.
If, Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee, if the state comes in looking for stuff, they will go around and with the DPW looking at every one of your catch basins, inspecting them, deciding if you have to redo each one of them.
How much of this have we done, if any?
It's to do the inspections first, and then you.
We haven't.
We haven't done any, because I know I see manhole, the drains with the red X's on them and stuff all throughout the town. I don't know if that's involved with this.
No, that's something the DPW did separately, but it turned out that the manholes that were tested by the Mass Maritime Academy were the wrong ones. Yeah, so it wasn't good.
So step 1 is to do the inspection, and if there's anything that's faulty, then we have to go in and fix it,
And
obviously.
we've got a really good consulting engineer
Okay.
working with the town that is also used at times by the DEP and the state.
Oh, someone who knows.
Yes.
How long do you think it would take for them to complete the inspection?
Uh,
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
How long do you think it would take for the consulting firm to complete this inspection? This
We'll be done by next fall.
next fall?
Yeah.
Is there
Some of the testing has to be done during wet weather. And you need to wait for it to rain to go out and hit all of these. And then you go back when it's dry out and see if there's water coming in. And you're looking for illicit discharge where someone has tied into the sewer that we don't know about. And DPW has found some.
Really?
People do funny things. So,
Sorry, so now that we're gonna become compliant, if the EPA comes in the meantime, do they at least back off because we're trying to bring ourselves into compliance, or is it one of those things like, you wanna get to the IRS before they get to you, so, like, how's this working?
so we communicated and confessed.
Perfect, okay.
And we just made them aware that there's been a change in personnel. The person that didn't do the work is gone. The town has reacted to that, and it's gonna get done, and that's the happy part.
Perfect,
And they're satisfied with that,
okay.
so far.
And I'm sorry, I just have one question, because I guess, from what I was hearing, the clerk is there 4 hours, and we need the clerk to be there for the full 7 hours. And I understand
Yes.
we're gonna get money from the wetland protection account to help cover the increase in salary, but that's only 3,000. I guess I'm trying to understand the salary, it's not making sense to me yet, so I'm sorry, if you can, somebody can just explain it again.
It hasn't gone by the selectmen.
Oh,
yet.
that's why it's not in the budget.
But it's to move the person who does 3 hours
Yes.
in a different department into this department
Yep.
full-time is what the Conservation
Yep.
Commission is proposing.
Yep.
And it's my understanding, I still haven't talked to the department that would be losing this individual or the selectmen.
Okay. So in other words, if the selectmen agree, then there'll just be an adjustment to the '23 budget to include this, okay.
It'll be a
The salary
transfer
wasn't making
between
sense to me, but now I
departments.
get it, yep. Understood.
And just so everyone knows, the commission did approve that tonight. They are in favor of doing that. So,
So, Mr. Hannon, I have a total adjusted budget of $92,212, is that correct?
Well, no, because we need to find out the delta between Marilee's full-time salary and my part-time salary. And you should be able to pull that money out. But I really didn't know what her salary was.
All right, because
And,
I factored in yours, but yeah, we don't have hers.
Yeah, so that is,
So we're just missing that one piece.
yeah.
Okay.
We're kinda on
The
hold anyway.
Marilee's salary was at 47,
A stormwater,
and plus a stormwater, yes, correct.
so that's 57. I believe.
So, if the other board, or the other department and the selectmen are on board, then I will be bringing in a revised,
Conservation budget, okay.
and the other department.
Will you be talking to the Board of Selectmen?
I will take their temperature.
And does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hannon?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon, for presenting your budget with all the detail and this work that you're going to be undertaking that, should have been done. We appreciate it. I'm sure the town's going to appreciate it, especially if we don't have to pay any big fines. So that'll be a good thing going forward.
Very good thing.
We're not going to vote. We're not going to vote on the budgets right now. We save that for the end when we do our deliberations, which will be probably the last Wednesday in March, first Wednesday in April. If we have any other questions for you, we'll reach out to let you know. But thanks for presenting your budget tonight. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
How far can you see with that telescope? His next door neighbor. Oh my God.
Okay, next on the agenda tonight, we're going to have the golf department, and we have Mr. Steve Tibbles here, the superintendent, and Mr. Dana Przewozowski, director of golf. Correct?
I want to thank the committee for taking the time and reviewing this evening with us. Before we get into this year's numbers, I want to give you a brief history of what we've been going through to get to this point so that we can kind of get an understanding of why our numbers are what they are at this point. COVID sets in, we're coming in on that first fiscal year. Governor says you can't open yet. March hits, April, May, they finally let us open. We're 160,000 deficit. What are we gonna do? In passing, talking with the selectmen, said, listen, the only thing we can control is we don't spend a penny until we absolutely have to, and we'll come as close to break even as we can. That fiscal year, I think we closed with a couple $1,000s profit. So it went haywire from there. No one knew that golf was just gonna take off. So then we go into the next year, which we did over $2 million in revenue, leading into this current season, where we are currently 288,000 above plan, but 125 behind last year's number where we did 2 million. So that 2 million number, as I expressed to the selectmen and the golf committee, that was the high water mark that could ever be achieved. We were sold out every single tee time, every 9 minutes of every day for the entire season. You showed up unannounced. Can I get you in? How many guys you got? 4? I think we can make it happen. So we pushed everybody and anybody we could onto that golf course to achieve that high water mark. And it was perfect weather. We did not have a single day of rain that entire summer. We had a lot of overnight rain, and if we did have rain, we still were sold out, and guys were checking in. We modified the operation. We created a walk-up window so guys could check in at the window, pay at the window, and then we created an outdoor cafe. So the cafe would be running we have a refrigerated tap beer truck and the grill. So even on those rainy days, guys were standing at the window with rain dripping off their face, paying their greens fees, and going out and playing golf. So that 2 million revenues is probably the most that we can achieve at that current price point as far as the volume of people that we can push through. So we're 125 behind that 2 million pace, but we're 288,000 above our current forecast. So in speaking with the golf committee, where do I think we're gonna fall this year with normal weather, a little dip in that fever of play. I figured we were gonna fall in between 1.6 and 1.8 for this season, which puts us roughly at what we're targeting on this budget, which is 1.7, if I'm not mistaken. 1.7 with the 100,000 in the emergency fund that is not tapped without being voted upon if we have a break in the irrigation or some massive emergency situation. So that gets us to the 1.7, our current budget, and then now we can go through with what we're looking at. Increases as we head down through the salary page. In speaking with the golf committee, if you review all of our budgets in the past on that line item hasn't changed at all for the entire time that I've been here running the course. And what that has entailed as wages have increased, and a lot of my my guys have aged and gotten older, and some have not been able to work. My current staff have absorbed those hours, and we haven't expanded, and we've offered basically less services. As we're hitting that dry spot, as I stated when COVID hit, we're a skeleton crew. So we worked through COVID on a skeleton crew with no ranges, with minimal amount of bag boy service and minimal staff. And so in speaking with the golf committee, now that we're seeing this higher level volume of play and interest, we figured it's in our best interest to institute our rangers, put our rangers back on, have them policing the course, minimize some of the cot damage that we've experienced with the rounds of play that we've had, increase some of these services with people in the pro shop taking calls, because when we had COVID and we were closed down, it was myself and the pro taking all the phone calls for the entire season, and we did that for two reasons. One reason, we had 2 college girls that were working with us for like 3 or 4 years. They graduated and moved on to their careers, but some of the mindset in not replacing it was COVID. And I was talking with Isaac, the pro, and I'm like, listen, if you get sick, then I got to work for 2 weeks straight, 24/7 until you get back on. Or, I mean, if somehow we both get sick at the same time, we're closed. So if we can keep everybody at arm's length and run this thing, kind of just suck it up and get through it, we'll see what happens. And with a little bit of luck and a little bit of due diligence, we did make it through, and here we are. So in being where we are, the golf committee said, let's put some guys on staff, get some people on the phone so you guys aren't tied down to the pro shop, and you can start managing the business and doing what we should be doing, paperwork and researching projects and moving forward with the business. So in that discussion, that's why the clubhouse employee line item has bumped up from 76.7 to 108. And part of that, as I was stating, with the skeleton crew, and when I first started, I think minimum wage was $7.50 or $8 an hour. Now we've crept up to be competitive with other retail businesses, and I think what is minimum wage right now is
State of Massachusetts is 14 and change.
14 and change. So
the other thing to recognize in this budget is that for the most part we have an entire budget, a big number at the bottom, but there are certain aspects of the budget that Dane is responsible for,
right,
and certain aspects of the budget that I'm responsible for. And salaries obviously are one issue of concern. I can speak to the salary levels for my staff. One of the things that I've been preaching to the golf committee for a couple of years now is that our staff in general is woefully underpaid compared to competing staffs. And we are losing the opportunity to attract and retain employees. This starts to be, you know, and then it's kind of snowballs a little bit, and lucky for us, we had a significant number of retired employees who've been working there in excess of 15 years. And with the exception of the last year and a half, they were barely making minimum wage or close to it. And in this year, it just got to the point where we could no longer compete, and you were in danger of not keeping some of the trained and skilled staff that you had. So, you know, you'll see what appear to be, you know, larger numbers, and what we had done is we positioned ourselves staffing-wise and pay rate-wise to not only be competitive, but to also reward the people who have been there, who have not had, at least in my opinion, you know, equitable or equal pay rate increases for the job performance that they're doing. And you'll also notice in there, as I think you may have alluded to in the previous discussion, there is no pay rate information or change for the four of us who are considered salaried, or actually there's four of us that are considered salaried, be myself, my assistant Dana, and the golf pro, because that is usually left up to whatever the Board of Selectmen decide for, how they term it,
Exempt.
non-union,
Exempt.
super, whatever the
Does that fall
terminology
under the classification?
Excuse me?
The wage and classification, there's all these salaries that we're referring to?
Well, they fall under the wage and classification in terms of the nomenclature for the category. There had been some changes in the actual pay rates moving forward, you know, through discussion with the golf, with the golf committee over the past several months in preparation.
What is the wage and classification that you're referring to?
They're talking about the, any adjustments they're talking about are COLA.
Right.
Right.
They're not reclassifications.
Yeah.
Right, and that's falling under the town's classification and wage scale?
I believe so, yes.
So if we're looking at your increases in salaries, how much of that is going towards an adjustment of the existing personnel, and how much would be going to new bodies coming in?
You know, I didn't, probably, I can't give you a
Ballpark.
percentage, I give you, I mean, basically, we've hired one new position, one new full-time position, actually not new, they were replacements.
Right. Most everything that we've done is replaced. As I said, we've had a larger amount on staff, but I've had guys that have aged, moved on, haven't come back. We've had one gentleman that passed away. Bag boys, mom said I couldn't work because COVID set in, so they didn't come back. And now we're putting all these pieces back in play. Typically, my budget has been $76,000 for that staffing level for the last 19 years. With the golf committee saying they want the ranger put in place, we used to have rangers a decade ago when Catino was here, and then we hit the dry spell of golf. So, hey, what are we gonna do? Well, listen, let's get rid of the rangers, lose those shifts, lose the weekday bag boys, lose the beverage cart. Just, you know, shave what you think is shave, stick to the nuts and bolts, carry through the operation. Let's get to it till we get to, you know, this point where we do have some funds and we can staff the place back to the way that it was back when we started. So for me, it would be 76, you know, versus the 108.
So that, out of that 32,000, we have rangers that are
Yes, we're
coming
gonna
on
put
board?
on rangers, we're gonna have
And then
some,
the wage adjustments for the existing personnel?
correct.
That's what I was looking for.
They are refilling
Mhm.
positions that were unfilled and unfunded during the dry years. They're putting them back. The operations is approximately 31K, and the maintenance is
37.
approximately 37K.
Right, and I'm looking at that, but when you talk about the dry years, if we go back and just look at 2020 or 2021, I mean, we're still looking at a significant double of what we were a couple of years ago, so I just want to see what we're adding in addition to it, besides just pay increases.
The other thing you're fighting is when you look at starting wages in the hospitality, Golden Arches and stuff like that, you're looking at $15 to $17 starting. And this is, yes, it's outside, but it's a little more not standing around and talking with your friends. You gotta work.
And if we go back to these dry years, we've also spoken with the golf committee that we just dial it back, so.
I understand, I just wanted to know what's the money getting us?
Well, the money, you know,
So,
you're.
and you answered it.
You're grabbing an additional part-time employee, and for me, an additional full-time employee. And like I said, you know, in years past, I mean, I've always pushed for pay rate increases because I feel my people deserve it. But in many of the situations in years past, you know, my hours went from 55 a week to 65 and 70 and 75.
Well,
Make
the
the
business,
difference.
right?
And the same for my assistant. And we
So,
don't have an
yeah,
over.
6 o'clock in the morning, there's Steve going out, and then
6
now it's
o'clock.
6 o'clock at night.
6 o'clock,
and
I'm on my second cup
it's
of
like with the
coffee.
cartoon Ralph and the sheepdog and the coyote.
Yeah, change of position.
Yeah, night for night.
But that's who's picked up the difference, and we don't have an overtime line item,
Right.
so we've eliminated overtime. And what we've had to do is change the start time and finish time in the spring and the fall for our part-time employees to be able to meet the payroll number that we have, based on weather and what have you.
And I've had a discussion with both gentlemen, and they're doing a review, but pretty much right now I can assure the board, other than in maybe one instance, there is no liability as far as benefits or any of those type of things, and no possibility of liability.
And I got one other question, just because you were talking about the benchmark for your high water at 2 mil.
Yes.
But I don't have, what's your projection for the next fiscal year? I mean, where do you think you're gonna come in at?
We put it at 1.6.
Okay.
So you're asking for FY 2023, what the projection is?
Yeah.
And I would, as Dana mentioned, that was your benchmark in earnings at your given rates. Of course, if your rates were to change, that would influence obviously the level for which you could earn.
Right.
I think it's more appropriate to look at your benchmark in terms of the number of rounds you can support. And I think what we do, 42. Yeah, so you're at, your peak, given your facility, the layout, and the way in which you get people on and off the golf course, your peak rounds are between 40 and 45,000
42
annually.
was that
That's
peak, yeah.
18 hole equivalents. And
It was nuts.
that year, it was
Absolutely nuts.
42.
Do you expect a change in your fees and?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the fees are probably going to have to fluctuate to match what we're experiencing in cost of operations and so forth, and material costs.
Right.
We try not to make them significant because people are comfortable with, the rates that we charge, but I'm sure they
I'm sure
understand.
you compare it with the
Well,
surrounding.
just as they do with gasoline and other things, they're paying more now than they were this time last year.
We used to be $4 or $5 behind Pecoy Brook, and then they sold. Someone else bought it. They renovated the restaurant and the bar, and they put in like 32 tap beers, and the guy stopped paying attention to his golf course. Now he charges, I think, $15 more on the weekend and roughly $9 more on the weekday.
To pay for all that.
But yes, and as we discussed with the golf committee, is we are a blue collar demographic golf course. We see some of the Catanza people in the preseason and the Bay Club when their course isn't open yet, and we do have some commuting affluent people that come through, but our bread and butter is the working guy. And when they get the day off to play golf, they fill the tee sheet on the weekend. And after the twilight area,
I know a few friends that come from Weymouth to play down here
Yeah.
in that golf course, and they say it's a really good.
it's a great track. I was just telling
Dollar
Jamie
for
today.
dollar, we have the best course going around here.
Mhm.
I think, I'd like to add one thing. I mean, I think with the current situation, with our record inflation that we're going through right now nationally, with increases in gasoline costs, all consumer goods, really, I think even a mild to moderate increase in any of your fees
Mhm.
probably won't be a shock to the
Correct.
people that are gonna come and play. Because they're probably gonna expect it because of what's going on nationally.
Absolutely.
So I don't think it's gonna be a big
And
surprise.
If we look at the budget,
That's
we're at a $100,000 deficit based on what your projection is to what your budget is. So we've got to make that up somehow.
well, no. So there's 100,000, and that's the reserve.
Right.
That we have it. We don't spend that 100,000, so that actually pulls us to the 1.6, which is our targeted number.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, at the end of the day, we want to at least break even and make money. And
Yes,
I think it's safe to say in the course of a year, something breaks.
yes, but
Right.
not,
Well,
hopefully
you're-
not $100,000
The
worth.
majority,
not.
I mean, when you look at the reserve fund, that reserve money is there, for instance, to address something, several years ago, we had vandalism where people stole golf carts, drove them across the
Right.
golf course, drove them into ditches, drove them into the woods, did spin outs on greens. So that's not something that your operation budget's going to be able to cover.
Right.
So you have to pull from that. I mean, if you have something, if I have a $60,000 fairway mower that catches on fire because of some type of,
Fuel.
just an accident, then you have to replace a $60,000 machine.
And that
That's
wouldn't
why
be in the
that-
budget,
that's
and that's
there.
why we put that
Right.
special line item there.
I understand that. So if we go back to look at your projection, how many rounds of golf does that entail? That 1.6?
1.6 is, 1.6 is probably gonna be in the vicinity of 37,000 rounds, right around there.
So just to break even realistically, we're looking at $253 a round, probably closer to $3 a round, just
And
to
which,
meet the budget number.
which
So-
we've been discussing, at the golf committee. They haven't approved it yet, but we were talking, it's on our next, agenda of our rate increases, and we were discussing $2 across the board, and maybe $1 on the cart, but it's still a topic of discussion, so it hasn't been nailed down.
Would that also include like increases in food and beverage?
No, that would not, but that is also on the table to be discussed as well.
Because I think it should be,
Mhm. Oh,
especially with, it's
Absolutely.
gonna
you
cost you,
mentioned
it's
your
gonna
last
cost you
name,
more to get it,
Right.
so you gotta make up that difference.
And as we go through the other line items, that's why those line items have increased, is what we're anticipating on the inflation factor of pesticides, fungicides, supplies, everything is going up. So that's why those line items are getting jumped up, what they're getting jumped up. So, we can move on to the next page, and if anybody has any questions going down the increases on, let's see, next one is repair and maintenance, buildings and grounds. That's going up to 7,250. Last year was, town meeting vote was 5,000. But if you look at the 21 actual, the one prior to that, in the yellow column, that was 13,000, so we felt it necessary to kind of, rise up a little bit, get closer to that number, so if anything happens, we're closer to meet, some unexpected repairs. We've been in this facility now for 20 years in our clubhouse. His equipment is aging. With the more use of carts, these carts are not cars, they're golf carts. So they're used to doing probably a turn and a half in a day. And with the COVID crowd that we've seen, they're doing 2.5 rounds a day. So there's a lot going on with usage.
Your equipment lease numbers, increases that are in here, is that taking into account the request you put in for the Board of Selectmen a couple of months ago for new leases on your mowers?
Well, when you're looking at these categories, are you referring to the one here, maintenance, rentals, and leases?
Actually, I was
Are
looking
you
at the big
referring-
one, the equipment leases itself.
Are you referring to the one at the end of the?
Yeah.
At the end?
Yes.
Well, that to my understanding, that includes the equipment requests that have gone before the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
There were basically, and it includes the existing one that was already in place. I am not going to say whether that's going to change right now or not, although it could, because there is a significant issue with actually getting equipment.
I remember hearing about that at your meeting.
I ordered.
We have to put it in.
Like a year lead time.
Well, I ordered a triplex in July, or the end of June in 2021.
Yeah.
It's going to be delivered to our distributor in Enfield, Connecticut in May 5th of 2022. There are no Toro 3400 triplexes or John Deere triplexes or Toro fairway mowers available in 2022. I put an order in based on that lease set up in the end of November, beginning of December. I was told you will not see that second triplex and that fairway mower till the spring of 2023. So we're probably, I've mentioned that to Ed, so we're probably going to have some discussions and probably going to change that somewhat, simply because
You're not getting it.
it's not, the
That
equipment's
number's
not
dynamic,
there.
basically. It's
And,
not.
the lease people are not going to hold you at the same lease percentage and so on,
Right.
a year down the road.
And I just sat down and I sent the golf committee my sit down and proposal for the golf cart rotation, we lease to own on those as well. And it's similar, the gentleman said, look, you can't get carts this year. And if you want carts next year, I need to know in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Because if you don't have a committed order, you're not getting it.
That's what
And
they told me.
the same thing was last year with golf balls. Because we had our pre-ordering, we had gloves. I didn't pre-order the balls. I was getting, usually you'd get a case,
Big
a
boxes.
couple cases the size of the chairs coming in. I was getting in 4 and 5 dozen at a time. I was out of balls within a day. They'd come in and I'd be out of balls. Can I get some more balls? The rep was going out to golf courses that had surpluses and he was picking them up and then he would come by and he'd drop off 5 dozen at a time. It was absolutely nuts.
Well, that's what
And
our,
Titleist is right down the
I was
street.
just gonna say, can't we get
No,
an end?
that's what he said. No.
for our equipment in our longer range purchasing that we had intended to be for FY '24, the orders for that equipment, as Dana alluded to, I was just told beginning of this week, if you want to see equipment in the spring of 2023, order it within the next month.
Mhm.
If you don't order it within the next month, you will not get it. So we're going over that, and we'll be re-looking at that number and probably refocusing our attempts at leasing to better fit the equipment availability. And of course, they won't hold you to the cost that you order it at now.
No.
Because they're saying, well, they all now put a little caveat down at the bottom of their
Little
equipment
asterisks.
quotes. That we hope to be able to honor this same price structure, but there are no guarantees that the price of this equipment will be the same a year from now.
Everything's lobster, market price. That's what you're paying. If we just make our way down, buildings and grounds, we did that one. Maintenance, repair and maintenance equipment, again, equipment is getting used and aging.
Well, we have, one of the reasons why that is where it is because we had planned to have these pieces of equipment in. And now, since we won't have them available to use, we have to have monies to put into the items that we intended to trade in and not make any investment in. I've got fairway mower, I run the reels down to just about no meat left on them to grind and sharpen, because I'm anticipating we're going to get a new machine. Now they tell me we're not, so now we have to go back and look at reels and other equipment. So that's why number was increased. And the other thing, I mean, our equipment fleet is aging. We have equipment now that's to the point where you're into the more significant cost centers for equipment. You're not just changing the oils and sharpening reels and sending them on their way. You're, replacing hydraulic motors. You're replacing, fuel pumps and hydraulic steering pumps and mechanisms and hydraulic hoses, and you're running into significant expense. On average, our triplex fleet is over 10 years old. The last time we made a major equipment purchase was 2011, I believe. We have been replacing items along the way, and
When we can afford to, and we have a decent year, then we go through and Steve has a prioritized list of what do we need first, and then we review the top 3, 5, 6 items, and what can we afford.
In 2015, we went through and created a 15-year plan as far as capital expense to cover equipment and other issues on the golf course, and I'm currently redoing that now. Our town administrators requested a 5-year plan, so part of that 15-year plan will be, I'll give them the whole thing, but you'll be able to see the first 5 years. But we do need to stay on top of equipment replacement, and in the future, I think hopefully I can convince the committee to lean towards a 4-year long fair market value lease, which is in our business similar to leasing an automobile. In that 4-year period, we put only enough hours on there to where we have basically a year and a half, almost 2 years of warranty, and then what we're basically doing is changing oil, changing filters, changing hydraulic fluid, and sharpening reels. At the end of 4 years, we turn the equipment in, or we have the option to buy it if we like. And I think that would better suit our needs going into the future. Plan.
Steve, can you explain to the people just about how many different types of lawnmowers that you use?
Well, I don't
People
have
don't
any
realize
lawnmowers.
There we go. You don't realize what
We
goes on.
have
I've seen them.
we have basically six different particular cutting units. We have 2 types of cutting units. Most of you are familiar with the rotary mower, which you use at your home. It has 1 blade or possibly 2 or 3 that spin.
Rollers.
We use rotary mowers to cut the rough. We use reel mowers to cut greens, tees, and fairways, or what we term short grass. There are triplexes to cut greens, which the traction unit is the same as or what some people call the tractor, is the same as the triplex units to cut tees and approaches, but you're using different reels that have different what they call clip rates and different number of blades. I mean, the reel, instead of cutting this way, it spins forward. The reel catches the grass, passes it across a bed knife, and it cuts the grass. That's how the grass is cut. We cut below 1/8 of an inch on our greens. We actually don't measure it. We measure it in decimal points now. We cut below 1/4 of an inch on our, we cut below 7/16 of an inch on our tees and our fairways. So we have different types of machines for those particular purposes. And we also have different types of set of reels for different, I'm not gonna get into cultural practices, but if you have a triplex, the reels alone on the triplex cost about $10,000. There's 3 wheels on the triplex, about $3,200 to $3,400 a piece. The traction unit itself costs about $42,000, so each time you purchase a triplex, you're looking at about 50 grand. Fairway mowers right now are 67,000. The big area rough mowers are 72, and these are our prices. These are Mass State bid prices where we have a 21% discount. So it's something that we need to consider with this long-range approach and planning, because some of the bigger items, like we just were able to purchase a set of grinders. Those grinders will last us 10, 15 years anyway, if they're taken care of, which we have a very good mechanic who does a good job at that. But That was a $67,000 investment, and those grinders are used to sharpen all the real machines and to sharpen the bed knives and what have you, put new faces on them. So there's a lot to our lawn mowing as compared to what's normally done for most people, or a lot of people in the landscape business. But
That's what I wanted you to explain.
Yeah.
The average person has no idea
No.
what goes on as far as the maintenance on
The price point is one thing, but what he does with the turf, that's the product that we sell. And when guys come through the shop, I don't try and sell. I try and just, if I can get you to that golf course as quick as possible, it sells itself. And if you go out and walk it, you can see it's in great shape. But if you go online and you look at some of the aerial that we've had with some drone photographs, you can really see what he's doing, and it's artwork, because you can see the cut patterns on the fairways and the greens and how it all comes together.
That's my guys. I stick with the walk mower.
It's
better for my
great,
health.
great work. Should be appreciated.
I think the quality of the work is great. I just love to see us charge a little bit more money so
Right.
that, you know, we're in the black and not the red
Right. Well,
moving forward with expenditures.
We have, out of all the years that we've been here, we've only had 2 years that we didn't make a profit. 1 year we fell shy by $14,000, and I think the other year it was like $10,000. For the other 17 years, we've always been profitable. So,
Yeah, I've
I'd say
been
that's a pretty good track record.
Mm-hmm.
Weather has a big
yes.
Mr. Kelly?
There has been a beginning of a discussion as far as the rates with the board. I think this committee should also realize that you have staff that have licenses and certifications that are normal in their business, but anywhere else would cost you considerably more as far as pesticide application, pesticide purchasing. There are a number of things your folks do that are similar. You've seen it in the DPW where you have people with CDLs or hoisting licenses, and they cost more because if you don't have those people able to work in-house, you're going to have to contract out for that work. And it's cost a lot more. The other issue that they didn't mention to you is that this golf course is the home golf course for Old Colony.
Yep.
And Old Colony plays on it for free, correct?
Yes, correct.
So it's also a public service to the youth.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think over the last 2 years, since we've been dealing with this pandemic, I think the golf has been a refuge for many people to get out and get some fresh air, be active, since you couldn't go into a gym for how long?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, without it, I think people would have been really going stir crazy. And it was great to have that available to our residents and to other residents from surrounding towns. To be honest with you.
And even in the off-season, if we could announce it, if people want to walk the course, even though it's closed and he's there taking care of the property, they're more than welcome to park the car, go for a walk the golf course. Gate locks at, what is it?
Well,
3 o'clock?
if they want to walk,
Yeah, you can park
if
at
they
the
go
top,
to walk
at
after
the top
4
of the
o'clock,
gate
they
and
can
walk
just
down.
park outside the gate. But we have people come in at the beginning of the season. I mean, my guys usually start at 4:30 to 5 o'clock in the morning. We got people running on the golf course at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, because you can go cart pass all the way through.
It's 5 miles.
Not that it's a budget item, but I think it is something we need to help educate the folks in town with, because you're more than welcome to come out and exercise, especially in those time periods where there isn't, we aren't actively golfing. I wouldn't recommend coming out at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon because you'd be in trouble.
I have had to warn people, say, I can't let you go out there with the dog today because we are open right now, but this is the time that you can come. So
the other thing is that we are probably, and I like to brag about this, we're probably the best wildlife habitat in the entire town. Some people may want to argue, but I'll go head to head with you on wildlife species and birth rates and populations, except for any of those of you who are out there, you can please take the geese, you can have them. One thing we don't want.
Do you get a lot of people that walk and run?
Yes.
Yes, we have a lot of people who.
It seems to be growing, if I'm not mistaken. It seems to be picking up.
It's picking up. We have, because people are finding it's a nice place. It's a nice, comfortable place to run. It's open, or walk or run. It's open. You can see different varying, different aspects of the wildlife. I mean, our deer population is strong, turkey population. We have a couple otters down by the 17th hole. Got a lot of people, talk about pollinators. I mean, we have a very strong butterfly and bee population, especially on the backside where we have more native vegetation than the front side allows. So yeah, and it seems to be increasing. Like I said, I encourage people to do that. And there's, I think somewhere in the original makeup of the golf course there was, and I volunteered to do this, but nobody ever took me up on it. Supposed to be a walking trail somewhere that's maintained. I think it was part of the original planning in the golf course. It wasn't actually on the golf course itself because of flying golf balls and all that good stuff. But we could make something like that and maintain it.
I think to be able to jog on the paths, I think it's a great thing. You're off the street. You don't have to worry about vehicles. It's safer.
Quiet, relaxing.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly manicured landscape. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
If we could, I'll jump down to the next. Steve's going to speak to this one as well, as the maintenance, rental, and lease with the amount of volume of play. We have to take care of the turf, which is going to require.
Well, what we've done with the rentals and leases, and it was partially initially. I came from a different budgeting scenario. Years ago, I've been here 22 years, and we normally took, certain operations out, or certain expenses out of other operational categories. What we've done now is we put the actual rental and lease items in that category. The one that stands out is that, given the size of our fairways and the limits of our existing equipment, we outsource or hire an outside company to do our fairway aeration. That cost about $7,700. The benefit for us in that regard is, obviously, first of all, we don't have the appropriate equipment to get it done. I've got one machine that's about as wide as that desk that you're sitting at, its production fails in comparison to the company we have come in, who comes in with 6 to 7 operators, 6 to 7 different machines, puts 2 to 3 machines on the fairway, and he's done in a day. Whereas it would take, without any interference, without interfering with golfers and so on. So, and that $7,000 of that is that increase is there. In the past, we've done it for the past 2 years, but it's always been something that's been, wasn't in the budget, but approved by the committee at the time it needed to be done.
Right.
Because we had, available funds. Now we're physically putting it in the budget. Hopefully in, a couple of years, we can afford the appropriate equipment where we can take that out of the budget, because we won't need someone to come in and help. But until we can afford that equipment, we not efficient in getting it done with what we have.
And as I previously stated, that with the carts, usually they would do 1.5 turns. Now they're doing 2.5 turns. Every time that cart drives on the fairway, it's packing. And that's why, we need to maintain the quality of the turf, and that
Well, as your
process
rounds
needs to
go,
take
I mean,
place.
it's, as your rounds increase, your revenue increases, and that's nice, but your wear and tear and your
Right.
stress increases. And my job is to stress the plant so people are happy with the golfing conditions. Dana's job is to get as many people on the property as possible in a given day. So sometimes we may,
There's a lot of
sometimes
disagreements
our
between him and I.
activities clash, and we may have a friendly disagreement here or there about quantity of people when they go off and how they do, but
No
in
choice
order
words
to
being
facilitate-
used.
No. And I'm always like, I don't have time to talk to you. Next.
I'd love to see this guy's lawn at his house. I wonder, is he?
No, I mean, I'm like the cobbler. My kids have the worst shoes. My lawn, I've got 4 acres. I cut an acre and half of it myself, and my wife still yells at me because I use a push mower. She said, "What's the matter? You're 62 years old." I said, "Because that's what I like to do. I don't like, it costs me $250 every 8 years at Home Depot or something, and I enjoy it." But I tried to convince my kids. My daughter's going to be a speech pathologist, and my son's going to be a physician's assistant. Neither one of them getting their hands dirty, so at least not in the dirt anyway. So I don't know what happened there.
So that was the increase for the rentals and leases for the most part. And then if we go down to the fertilizers, pesticides, that's mostly to deal with what we're discussing before.
Well, what we did, normally fertility, pesticide, and seed prices increase anywhere from 3 to 5% annually based on what's occurring in the market. In consultation with my salespeople back in October, they were predicting that there's going to be at least a 7 to 10% increase, especially in the fertility prices, because the nitrogen aspect of most of your fertility products that we use, and actually most other people use in the homeowner market, is tied to natural gas and the production of urea. And natural gas prices are going through the roof, and I'm sure the people in England are much more concerned about getting their houses heated than we are making fertilizer, so they're consuming quite a bit of it. So we've looked at, I spoke with all of them. Our seed budget, it says seed, but it's seed, top dressing, and ornamentals. That covers the top dressing stand for our greens and some of our teas. It covers mulch. It covers any perennials or annuals that we purchase, and it also covers seed for the rest of the whether it be fairway greens, teas, fairways, or rough. And it does also cover miscellaneous items that we might need to buy, like stone dust to fill potholes, or if we're going to do an in-house project of constructing a stone wall or a tie wall or doing something like that, that comes out of there. Our fertility budget also includes wetting agents, which are materials that we use on a, probably 4 months, possibly 5 months out of the year. Best way to describe them is they permit the water to penetrate further into the soil and wet what's called the soil profile. So instead of the water sitting at the top, we can get it to go through 4 to 6 inches of the profile, so we have a healthier plant, a better root system, those, again, because of the chemistry of the materials used to make them, are going up significantly in cost as well. So what we did is, we look at that, and I think it has the percentages. We decided, after
They're mostly 10, yeah.
spoke with Ed, he and I came up with that number of 10% for those particular categories, and you'll see it's basically 3 categories: the fertility, the top dressing, seed, and pesticides, and one other was our supplies, which includes anything from tea markers to tea towels to dry off golf balls on ball washers. Any small equipment expenses we may have, for instance, string trimmer or backpack blower, toiletries for the building, paper products and other products for the shop, and so on. So, and again, in going through that with the distributors and seeing what the prices had increased over the past 12 months, we decided to be prepared and put that 10% allocation in those 4 categories.
Same thing with pro shop supplies, food and beverage. You guys go shopping, grocery bills are going up. You can't avoid it. So that's why we'll be discussing our food and beverage rates, the products we're selling, and increasing by 10% on the just to offset some inflation.
Don't sell chicken wings, they'll cost you a fortune.
Especially this
How
weekend.
about ribeyes? Has anybody seen the price of steaks lately?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Chicken wings are even more at this point.
Really?
Yeah, chicken wings are up, I expect, for this weekend, they're up 14%.
Really?
If you can find them.
You find good out clears and you'll spend $12, $13 a pound for them right now.
That's nuts.
Don't get me wrong, they're great chicken wings.
And I think probably the next biggest one, as we discussed the golf cart, the equipment lease already, would be the increase in insurance. And if you look back to the 21 actual, it was 35.8, and that's what we put it at this year. It was just to match what we had already paid.
One thing, it's not so much a question, but Ed Isaac came to me about 7 or 8 months ago and requested that I look into the actual insurance that we have for our equipment and things at the golf course. I requested said information from the town administrator at the time and really never got anything of any substance that I could understand. So moving forward, I'd like to be able to look at that because I feel as though in some circumstances we might be undervaluing things, in some circumstances we may be overvaluing things from what I've seen. My wife is in the insurance business for 40 years, and she kind of scratched her head when I tell her about the numbers, and she writes insurance for municipal. Well, she does insurance for towns in and around Rehoboth. So
Mr. Kelly, you want to
kind
add
of
to
get an
that?
idea about how that works.
We will be working together. I have requested a meeting with Maya, and they are coming down. I've dealt with them in the past, various places. If they're not responsive, I have no problem going out and issuing an RFP. And for example, in one case, Maya for workers' comp came in a lot higher, so did a number of other insurance companies. I went with Mega, which is a group purchasing for insurance for school districts, just for comp. I went with a different insurance company for P&C. So it's, as long as you put the RFP out and you write it in the right way, you can get responses, and I have no problem with Maya. I've used them on other insurances. It's just a question of getting the best deal for the town. And so, yeah, and whenever you go out for an RFP, the companies are going to come in and actually look at what you're insuring and consider what their risk is and consider what the value of the properties are. So yes, but if you stay with one too long, they just hit you with a raise in rates that isn't based on the actual business. It's based on how much they think you can take and gulp and pay. And so, yeah, I think it's a review that should be started, and we should look at other options and see what the best deal is. Also, so you know, I've just started an investigation as far as the credit card and purchase of service units, and we're going to be looking into that town-wide.
We use a credit card system, and it's tied into.
I know.
I'm just curious because I was told that the system they use and is an older system than the town uses, and they're bought separately.
Yeah, they have their own system, right? You have your own.
No, but they're bought at different time and
Yeah.
separately, and no one's bothered to go back to the companies and say, and there are only a few that do it for
Mm.
municipalities,
I wasn't aware of that.
and say, what happens if we use one system townwide? So I'm starting that investigation and we'll go forward with it.
Is there any way to reduce or offset credit card fees? Because you look at our budget, it's $28,000
Well,
we pay in credit card fees.
Yeah, but-
It's a percentage of your
yeah,
sales.
but you've got to deal with the companies, and when you start to deal with them, you can,
Well, I just wondered if you couldn't, do
Yeah,
like
it's
gas,
a-
Add
using,
5 cents to
using,
credit card
well,
purchases.
using
it's
a
a
credit card.
percentage. It's a percentage that you're paying.
Actually, you can't
And
do
you
that.
can go to the
Huh?
companies and
You're not
start to
supposed to do
bargain
that.
on the
Yeah.
That's what
percentage.
drives me crazy.
I just wanted, because, it's an individual choice to use a credit card, correct?
Yeah.
Now, what,
So why don't you pass that fee on to the individual? who
No,
chooses
you
to use it?
can't.
You can't.
is that illegal?
It is.
Yes.
You're not supposed to.
Yes, it is illegal.
All the gas stations do it.
I was-
It's
But
against-
public sector, you can't.
Yeah.
Of course.
But what you can
Oh,
do
can
is
private
bargain
businesses
with
do
the
it?
provider
Providers change
companies for
the
different percentages.
Yeah.
And that should have been done a while, and it should have been a unified approach.
Is it different from municipalities versus the private sector? Are they allowed
Yeah.
to charge? Is that what it is?
I understand.
You can pass on, and the private business can pass it on, we can't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes, I will vouch for that, being in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
I can do it, but, I don't. I just absorb the cost just because I have a lot of loyal patients who have, been good to me for many, many years, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, they
I-
look
I
at their
thought
receipt,
about
they
it.
don't, what's this extra charge for? What's that?
Right, it could be $1, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
Customer
So-
loyalty.
The theory being unified system, therefore we can negotiate potentially a lower percentage, is
yeah.
that?
Well, also,
Bundling.
it's a purchase of service equipment,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's everything.
yeah, not
And
just
it's-
in the fee.
And the fact that you've got, software involved in everything now, you've got licenses.
Mhm.
If you stay with something too long, you end up,
Yeah.
let's see how to say it nicely. You end up
Getting the
put-
worst possible,
yes.
yes.
putting the deal you're getting is a bad deal.
Yes.
I'll vouch for that because I've switched companies over the years, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, because I paid more attention to the fees that I was paying, and I'm like, these are this is getting higher and higher. It was like ridiculous. So
Yeah.
I kind of called them out on it, and they gave me some BS explanation,
Mm.
and I was like, the heck with this. I ended up going with a different company, and it's so much better. I got better service, and I'm paying less in fees. So it's
It's
the
kinda
bottom line.
like
You gotta
the-
do your homework.
Yes.
It's kind of
No.
like the new customers always get the introductory
So-
plan for the first
Yeah, it's
18
like,
months.
how many times you're gonna get punched in the face before you hit back,
Yeah.
If
Or
you-
move,
Exactly.
or move, yeah.
For what a lot of people deal with, if you pay no attention to what you're paying for cable,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. yeah.
your deal ends up being a bad deal eventually.
Mhm.
Probably not a great analogy since we have one option for cable.
Yeah.
I'm saying,
But if you
I
signed
pay
up,
attention to it, it doesn't make me happy.
but if you signed up 10 years ago and someone else signed up 2 years ago, very likely they're
Yeah.
getting more product and paying less
Yes.
than you are.
Yeah, till that
As
2-year
a
contract
As
is
a
up.
new user, yeah, they're getting more of a
Yeah.
discount.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Anyway.
Sore
Back,
subject.
back to the task at hand here.
Yes. So that pretty much gets us right down to, that's the final line item. And we have the long-term debt, principal and interest, which that changes every year, a little bit more on this, a little bit less on the other one. And that is set to expire in 2027. That's our final year of payment, and then you own the golf course.
Is there, now, it's probably one of those things where, a town entity can't do it, but we could not make additional or greater payments on that debt to pay it down
It's a
sooner?
bond.
It's a bond? Oh, okay.
Dana, I do have one question.
Yes.
On the capital projects line item.
Yes.
What
Too
is-
little
what is
time
that?
to
So
really decide.
we had that several years ago, and as the things got tighter, we eliminated the capital projects. But we did, in previous years, we'd have maybe $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 in that. So if we want to do a bunker restoration, or if, what was it? When did we do the tee boxes?
Well, we did a couple,
Couple
normally,
years
we
ago.
used to have, we used to have about $50,000 in capital. Now, the approach has shifted from that somewhat to going to, town meeting articles and requesting funds at town meeting. Because really, in many respects, because we are a town entity, we have to go out and pay prevailing wage for everything. The $50,000 wasn't cutting much of anything. I mean, it's kind of silly that I sit here, as the, town of Acushnet, and it costs the guy down the road, who will remain nameless, $7,000 to build a bunker, and he's got, nice, private club. And you come down here, and it costs me almost $14,000 or almost $12,000 to build the same bloody bunker because I have to pay prevailing wage.
So
Which is kinda,
if we have additional projects where we want to beautify upgrade a certain hole, after so many rounds with the bunkers being used, the sand is all thrown up on the bunker faces, the grass starts dying, Steve has to go in, replace the grass, dig out the sand, pull it all out, check if if the bunker was originally designed with a drain. If not, he puts in a drain, resurfaces the bottom, puts the sand back in, and then refaces the face. So when we go in lean times, we don't do too many special projects. But when we start having decent years, you have to maintain that, the quality product, because that's why people come.
And your golf course is on the verge of what, 27, 28 years old, I think 26 maybe, if I'm not mistaken. And your bunker's going to need to be rebuilt. You're going to find out that in many respects, some of your teeing areas were constructed too small. Others need to be larger. Things are going to show up, for instance, where the contractor buried stumps in the fourth fairway. Now it looks like,
or the cart paths start dipping because they buried a stump there. Now the stump's
or
decomposed.
they didn't put enough base in there, so the cart path falls apart.
Which, that is also part of the capital projects, is we have a numerous amount of cart paths that are
You have to keep them,
crumbling.
it's just like the roads in the
Yes.
street. You occasionally have to repave them, you're gonna want new ones, they're gonna fall apart. And this is, again, is included in that 15-year plan. But in several years past, we haven't had the luxury of doing that. And, I've bumped heads with the golf committee occasionally because I'm not a Band-Aid guy. I'm not gonna waste $2,000 to $3,000 on this thing. If you're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right and spend the right amount of money. There's no sense in wasting $2,000, coming back 5 years and spending the 8. So we'll get by until we can make that, adjustment. And in some cases, in golf work, you need to hire a guy who knows how to shape. So by shape, I mean if it's not shaped right, your mower's gonna scalp it, you're gonna tear up, your machine's gonna slide into the bunker, water's gonna drain into the bunker where it's not supposed to. And, as far as cart paths are concerned, in many respects, if you're going to put new one in, you might wanna have somebody design it, because I'll show you where it's gonna go, but I'm not laying it out because I'm not gonna be liable if somebody takes a turn too quick and the golf cart flips over. These are gonna come back for the guy who designed the cart path. That's why it's important at times to get an architect to put his, stamp on it. And those things cost us money, and on top of, prevailing wage, we just couldn't get many projects in, so we decided to, use some of that money in. Instead of pushing it towards capital, we decided to push it back towards the regular budget to offset some of the expenses that were going up that we knew we were going to have to pay, and put some of the projects off. And the golf committee has done a good job of doing the important things that we needed to do when they needed to be done, like replacing the pump station several years ago. Redeveloping wells when they need to be redeveloped, and so on. So we've, been able to hold on, and, we're looking forward to getting to that point where, your budget has an extra, you can budget the same amount and have, a couple extra $100,000, and hopefully we won't have to buy
And that
all
is
fire trucks and police cruisers.
one thing that is commonly said by our customers is, I like playing it because you guys are always making improvements on the place. So whether it's a berm or an open space created, eliminate some congestion in certain areas, or repair of a bunker, customers notice that. So we try to pick the ones that need it the most, and we try and put them on a scale. What are the ones that are most highly visible, so they can be recognized by the customer? And there's a balance to where and when you attack those projects. And so that's why we reinstituted that line item.
So one thing I'd like to just point out is that, the bottom line is basically the user fees that you collect during the course of the year, which is basically your revenue projections, cover the cost to operate the golf course.
Yes.
Which by definition is an enterprise fund.
Correct.
Which is what we have here. It's one of 3 enterprise funds that we have here in town. The other 2 are water and sewer. An enterprise fund is not funded through taxation. So taxpayers, and I think this is important to bring up. So for anybody who's watching out there, your taxpayer dollars are not funding the golf course. It's funded by the people that go and play. Because I think that's been a point of controversy. And I wanted to
A lot of people don't understand
and I wanted
that.
to make some clarification on that. And if, Mr. Kelly, if you want to add anything to that, feel free.
Well, the golf course is a town property. It's owned by the town. It's the same as any, the fields at the school or buildings that the town owns. It's an entity that the town owns. You have to support it, you have to maintain it, but the design is through an enterprise account, which means that fees are charged, and it maintains not only the entity, but it pays the debt of the entity, the debt you paid to acquire it, and the interest on that debt. So it is, when they say that in 2027,
Yes.
the debt will be paid off, at that point, there could be revenue in the enterprise account that will be limited to either maintain the course, improve the course, or other recreation facility. You could improve the walking trails.
There'll be more options, basically, to enhance the golf course and the town, which I think, I think the golf course is going to be a potential, and I think it is already a gem for the town. And it'll be even better, once the bond is paid off completely and the interest in 5 years.
And this town, there's a synergism what you get from a golf course that will, if it helps with bringing people into town, that'll help the businesses in town, that'll help the restaurants in town. And as such, with an attraction like that, you're in effect putting Acushnet on the map, and the businesses in Acushnet on the map.
Exactly. I mean, we have Rochelle's right outside of the golf course on Main Street. So how many foursomes say, hey, let's get together early, let's go grab some breakfast before we get out there?
Anybody who shows up when there's a frost, that's the
delay.
first
That's
place
the
I
first
send
place
them.
we send them.
Or when they're done,
Pack that place.
or when they're done, maybe they want some Portuguese food, they're gonna go over to
I
Cali
send people to
Food.
Captain's Place. I always feed them to the local places
Yeah.
and the creamery.
The friends that I have from Weymouth, they go over to Acushnet Creamery after they get them playing, so it's.
It-
Well, I mean,
and I
and
bumped
when
into
we-
local businesses, and they say, our numbers run right in line. When I watch the meetings on TV and you say you're up 10%, I look at my bottom line, and I'm usually up 10%. If you're down 15% because of weather, my business is
Well,
down
And
15%.
things that we can buy, I mean, Country Hardware is, 2.5 minutes away from the golf course, if that. And it's a great resource.
Yes.
Anything that I need that they can supply, I buy for them. I mean, they're great people, they have decent prices. and, anything I don't buy hydraulic parts from any of our distributors unless I have to. I go down to Metro in New Bedford and get all the hydraulic pumps and hoses and stuff made to order right there. I don't have to call Toro up and wait 2 days or a day for it to come in the mail. I can take the physical hose, go down to Metro and have them make that hose right there with the proper fittings. So we try, and I've been doing that is ever since I've been here, and try to use the local businesses to supply what we need, because there really isn't any need to go outside, because we have a lot of stuff right here.
Well, those are great points to bring up.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys coming in, providing us with a detailed analysis of your budget and an explanation. It gives us a lot of insight as to how the operations take place. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, obviously. You're running a business. And
Well, I've always said, I always invite people to come out and, if they're concerned about where the money's spent or how it's spent, come out and look at it. You're more than welcome to come down and visit us, although after 5 o'clock in the morning, there aren't too many people around the shop besides my mechanic. And for all those, as far as the green space goes, for all those concerned, a 4x4 foot patch of grass, 4 feet by 4 feet, supplies enough oxygen for a family of 4 for a year. Everybody thinks trees do all the oxygen production. It's those little grass plants with all those significant root systems. So, and it's much better for you to play on than turf. You got one more question.
Thank you.
We got a question, the phone budget.
Yes.
You have 2 separate line items for that. You have telephone and you have the maintenance. Can you explain the breakdown?
Sure. Our telephone is for the pro shop operation.
Yep.
And the maintenance building has their phone system as well.
Yeah, we have a phone system, and our cables paid out of there. Dana has but you have the reservation system.
Yes,
on
I have
his phone
multiple
system.
lines, and there's one in the snack bar, and they're all,
How many lines you have?
Excuse me?
How many lines you have?
I think we have,
3 or 4.
yeah, I think it's 4
Those seem kind of high.
high lines, or the
They're
price.
High in price.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess what's the maintenance for phone breaks or whatever you're replacing out of that?
Well, the main we have, I believe it's around 240, 250, maybe a little bit more. Each month I have we have a phone line
Yep.
and a fax line.
Maintenance is a division, it's not the maintenance of the phone system, I think.
Oh, okay.
right.
Yeah, so yeah.
So this is including your cable and all that?
Yeah, that includes
Okay.
that concludes our cable.
All right.
And we have our telephone is roughly, it runs about $170 a month, and then we have our the Comcast internet that ties in, so we have to pay that as well.
Because we did that upgrade a few years ago where you are serving him
Yes.
for Comcast, for internet. Is that
Yeah,
adjusted and all
the
that?
comes, you, as the municipality, you have supposedly one comp account. And that was reserved for, Dana's end of the business there. When we put in the new payroll system, they came in, put the payroll clock, we have a payroll clock, and we have there's a separate computer in my office that runs the payroll, and that's it. And it connects to Dana's payroll, because we're not down here, like at town hall and part of this network. And then we have cable in our building that allows us to have internet access for the irrigation system, and as well as cable news, which we keep on the weather channels to get weather updates in the morning and in the afternoon prior to the next day's work. So.
And I don't think that if you look back at the 21 actual, the golf committee had elected to switch out our phone system because we were using one company and we were losing service.
Was it Vonage?
Vonage. And then they got to a
Six in my
point.
head, 'cause
God, it was, they wouldn't allow us to pay via paper invoice. You had to pay via credit card, and they couldn't get it through their skull that I couldn't pay. 'cause
Yeah, a
we're
lot of those
municipal.
voice over IP services are like that. They need a card on file. They won't.
It was, yeah, but, and we
Yeah.
did, and for the first 6 months, they let us pay via paper, and then all of a sudden, it switched it off, and they wouldn't mail it out, and I couldn't go and print it online, and I called, and then they said, no, you have to have an account that spends $5,000 or more to get a paper invoice, and I was like, listen, you guys are playing bait and switch with me here, and so anyway, we ended up switching, so we had to change out our equipment, which is why you saw a jump up in the number, but I don't think we'll end up spending $3,000. We'll probably be in the vicinity of the 22 to 2,500. That's where I think it's gonna fall.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
I'll make a comment, more general comment
When you give your
when we
report.
talk.
Okay.
I don't want to hold these gentlemen here.
Okay. Yes.
They have to get up early and work.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I
thank
just
you.
want to say thank you for two things. One, sales drives the machine, so I'm with you, get as many bodies through as we can.
Thank you.
And two, for actually saying the phrase "park the car" with the Boston accent here for everybody watching at home to hear. Greatly appreciated.
What Boston accent? I don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So it's
They
a
wanna
good thing
park
I-
the
it's
car,
a good
but-
thing I didn't revert back to where I'm from, because it's completely different than a Boston accent. Needless to say, some of my distant relatives wore gray, the big one, and not blue.
Yeah, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming in tonight. We appreciate it. If we have any questions going forward, we'll reach out.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Don't hesitate to come down and visit.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
come on down for a
I see
walk.
a couple golfers up. I don't know
And
if
then-
everybody
when
plays.
I
we
figured
open
put
up-
you to work.
We can do a group
We
rate.
can do that too.
Get you out there for a.
You're all booked
control
up.
room.
I'm gonna get out there so you guys can see how lousy I play. Don't worry.
You know,
Wow.
we don't judge.
All right.
No, we don't.
We've seen enough people play golf to realize that you can't judge.
Thanks
night.
again.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.
Okay, next. Next on the agenda is the reserve fund transfer from the police department that we tabled last week. We're gonna take that up this week. I have some clarification on the questions that we had with regards to the balance that they have in there, which was $7,500. So I spoke with Chief Richmond this past week, and he said that money is already earmarked for some repairs to some of the mobile technology in the cruisers that they have. And they're also looking to purchase some, as he termed it, less lethal equipment, weaponry, if you will, instead of tasers.
Bolos.
What is it called again?
Bull-
It's like a bolo. It
Lassos.
reaches out and it
Okay, so like
wraps
a
around
netted kind
somebody.
of thing?
Yeah.
All right, so,
Cowboy
yeah.
lasso.
So we're resorting to that kind of stuff now because, our law enforcement, their hands are tied, they can barely put a hand on anybody, so.
Wait until one gets them around somebody's neck and we'll be dealing with a whole other thing.
So that money's already earmarked for that.
Yeah, this is above and beyond the
Yes, so
7,500.
the two, the solar speed signs it's a separate request, which we discussed last week. This was already approved by the Board of Selectmen.
I'll make a motion.
Science portable, can they move them from?
I believe they can.
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah.
Main
Yes.
Street?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, I remember hearing the meeting.
Yeah, and they're basically designed to act as a deterrent.
Okay.
It's just an
From
alert.
certain areas where there's excessive speeding going on.
And it is proper for the reserve account because it was unexpected, and it fits all the categories you need to worry about as far as DOR is concerned.
So is it, and pardon me for being new, but is it unreasonable to ask them to actually, we earmarked money and it was given to them for that particular project. They spent it elsewhere. If I'm looking at it accounting-wise, I would have liked to have seen, okay, well, we need the extra funds because we have to do this repair, this repair, this repair, instead of saying it was going towards something that we already partially funded.
I
And
believe,
just on an accounting-wise, it's confusing. I would have much rather have seen it, okay, well, we need the extra funds because we have to do this repair, this repair, this repair, instead of saying it was going towards something that we already partially funded. I just, on an accounting wise, it's confusing. I would have much rather have seen it, okay, well, we need the extra funds because we have to do this repair, this repair, this repair, instead of saying it was going towards something that we already partially funded. detailed out in, this
I
is
think-
why we need the
I
extra
think
funds.
this request may have been like maybe an unexpected request because of the issue with speeding, or became an issue, where maybe it wasn't at the time, and it was brought to their attention. So I think that's why the chief was trying to, I think he was trying to be proactive in this and respect maybe the request of surrounding neighbors, because I would imagine that there was some complaints from neighbors with speeding going on. And I think maybe that was part of it.
No, I don't have a problem with the request, it's just that we already had money, when we looked at it, that was earmarked towards those signs. So we were expecting the balance to be different, but they used some of that money to fund other items that were needed. I would have liked to have seen, we need this $10,000, this much more for the signs and this much for these other unexpected expenses, so that there was no confusion on where the money was going.
Hold on to that thought, so when Chief Richmond comes in, we can bring it up with him. He's gonna be here next week.
You just want me to get a ticket in this town, don't you?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes without opposition. All right, so we had Here's the original. I'm signing the one where I wrote notes on.
If he's here next week, I'm just gonna put one of these other signs up in front of me, just in case.
So I'm leaving this here, unless you want to take this, Mr. Kelly.
I can take it and give it to the.
I let Melissa know I was going to leave it here on the desk where I was sitting, and then she was going to grab it. when she
I'll
came
put it in my office.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right. Where's my cover letter? Too many papers. I had my agenda in front of me, and
You're up
Wait,
to
I'm
old
I'm
business.
I'm looking at it.
I was
Yeah,
wondering
old
what you were
business.
looking for, I'm like, I think that's what he wants.
It's been a long day. It's been a long day. All right, so that's all set. Next on the agenda is old business. Does anybody have any old business that they would want to bring up? Okay, under new business, what I'd like to bring up before we get the town administrator report, Sue Delgado and myself, we attended the school committee meeting last night. And we're going to meet with the school on March 23rd instead of March 16th. It's a conflict for them, they cannot do that date. So we're gonna push it out 1 week. It's gonna, we're cutting things a little close, but we should be able to get it done. If we need one extra date for deliberations beyond March 30th, then we will still have April 6th to do that if we need to. And Sue and I are also going to meet separately for, we call it a pre-meeting, with the superintendent and Kristen Flynn after they approve their budget at their next school committee meeting. So we're going to meet with them before they come before us and present their budget, just so we get a sense of where they are at and what the town is facing as well. We can let them know. And if there's any issues prior to us hearing their budget, then, in the past, things have been adjusted, and, you never know. I mean, if that has to happen, then that'll take place hopefully before we hear their budget. So that's what I have for new business. We're gonna hammer out the rest of the scheduling. I'm gonna do that with Kathy this week. Next week on the agenda is DPW and the police department. We'll cover that in a second. I'd like to get Mr. Kelly's town administrator report. Anything new that you have that you want to share with us?
A couple things. First of all, you had the Board of Health in. They're coming in for the reserve transfer on the 6,000 for the contact tracing at some point, hopefully shortly, so we know where we stand. Planning will be coming in for a reserve transfer because they have at least 4 articles that are going to need to be advertised. They have no advertising or very short advertising money. And under the law, you have to advertise the hearings. They have to put it out there, and whoever budgeted didn't even consider how much one article, the public hearings for a zoning article, because you got to print the zoning article. Just to give you a heads up, I met with our health insurance consultant today. I told them that I was very displeased with the first projected increase of 15%. I didn't know the woman who came in, but I knew her boss was on Zoom. We've done business in the past, and you have had some catastrophic costs.
That's the justification?
There is 8 causes for concern. I can't say a lot because of HIPAA,
Right.
but there's 8 causes for concern. Some of them are not going to be carrying on to the next year, but the insurance company in their original projection included them. So we've got that argument we're working with. We've got an argument also that there is some of the issues they were noting are literally $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 above what they consider their limit. And I argued that in most cases a plus or minus 5 is standard, 5,000 is standard operating procedure when you're pointing out these raises in rates. And then we also are going to meet with the IAC, talk to them about some issues and see, shake and bake what we provide and see what that, if that works. Because your health, dental, and vision are all bundled together, and dental and vision come in later than health does. Health, we're looking at meeting with the provider March 2nd. So within our time frame, I should have an idea of where we're going with that. Just so you folks know, some of the questions you asked tonight and you asked, when I come into a community, I start by looking for low-hanging fruit and where can I get savings and efficiencies, etc. We're reviewing overtime. You saw from my comments, we're reviewing the fact that you've got this credit card systems and pay systems that are not tied together. I'll be looking at the phone system and the communications. Nick has been doing yeoman work as far as IT. Just, I know it's low-hanging fruit and it's not much, but, you know, the Giuliani principle of you worry about the graffiti and then you work and see what else happens. Nick has been deleting and terminating email addresses that do not, people are not here or they're not valid anymore, and it might be $1,500 savings annually, but you gotta keep piling that up and going through and seeing what goes on to actually move efficiency in. You know,
Do we pay by mailbox when it comes to email? Do they pay by mailbox when it comes to email?
there's so many free, we move people into, he moved people into the free. There's so many that we pay for, we get so many free and we have to pay beyond that.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so, and people hadn't been paying attention, I guess there were people that were still on the address book, so to speak, that hadn't been here for years. You know, you just start and you just keep moving and just, as I said, grab the low-hanging fruit and work your way up the tree. Also, just to give you people a heads up, which is typical, you budgeted $110,000 for snow and ice. Right now, you're at $118,000 and change.
A lot better than the 25 that we used to, wasn't it?
Yeah, we should
Yeah,
budget
and-
2025.
And then you asked, you folks asked about the cost of the recent blizzard.
Yes.
32, almost 33K. Right now, if we don't have any massive like that, DPW is looking for maybe snow and ice will be 40K in deficit.
Yeah, it was the budget that we always ran in deficit.
Well, you have to,
Yeah.
because you can't, it's one of two budgets that you're allowed to run in deficit. That and judgments. And snow and ice, once you appropriate a certain amount in future years, you can't reduce it. And so it's smart to run it at the deficit, because if you put it up to 175,000 and you have a year you don't have a lot of snow and ice,
Yeah.
so it's common practice among all municipalities that you budget that one light and you run it as a deficit. And I think that's all the notes I had for you folks, but I'll be coming to your meetings and we'll keep, it's a ongoing process until we finalize the budget, and hopefully you people advise town meeting to pass it without any objection. And then we have an operating budget to go forward, and as I get better revenue figures, I'll bring them to you.
Yeah, I was gonna touch upon that with you. So I know we're not gonna meet on March 16th, but I may like to reserve that date to possibly review articles, all the articles that we're gonna have. And also, we'll probably have a better picture with more concrete numbers, I would imagine, at that point. So we can. We'll
The
have a better
legislature being the legislature, maybe.
maybe, maybe not, but, you know, have a better idea of what our looming deficit is, and then compare that to all the budgets that have come in before us, and So we have an idea, and that'll be before the school presents themselves to us.
Well, their chapter 70 is going up. But hopefully by that date, we'll have what I call the budget busters, like health insurance, PNC, those type of things.
So it'd be nice to have all those figures. So
Yeah.
I think that meeting could serve that purpose on that day. I'm just thinking ahead. So that,
I'm gonna talk to the selectmen, you don't have a moderator. So also to you folks, as far as the format of the warrant, as far as consent agendas, items, that type of thing. So you can get through town meeting efficiently, because you have articles that most towns take as consent agenda articles, where you say Articles 5 through Article 20 is a consent agenda. If anyone has any objection, we'll take that one out of and vote it separately, but all of them then were voted, because you vote the same thing every year,
Right.
rather than take them up individually. And it usually can save half an hour, 45 minutes in town meeting time.
They do that with the budget article usually, they'll just do this.
No, but this is for, like, your cable PEG article.
Yeah.
You do that the same type of thing every year. There are typical articles in the
The
beginning.
library books.
Yeah,
for
selling the
$1.
library
Yeah,
books for $1.
a lot of them
Yeah.
are just boilerplate things that we
Yeah.
have to cover.
And if you do them in a consent agenda, you just get one vote and it's done. I've been talking to the town clerk about it. We've got some ideas that way. Usually it's the moderator who does it, but you don't have one.
So what happens at town meeting then without the moderator? Who takes over for that? Is that the town clerk that has to play a role?
Well, I told Pam that I've never seen it happen. Usually the town meeting can vote an individual to be acting moderator for that town meeting. But the problem is, there are a lot of restrictions as far as if they can serve on another board, etc. So, it would be the type of thing that if someone was volunteering somewhere else, they'd have to resign to accept the moderator post, even if it was for one meeting. And then there's, but the issue is, if nothing else, the town clerk. But we're hoping there's a solution before that.
Somebody steps up.
Okay.
And I think town council has told me, I asked him to check again, but it has to be a resident. It can't be someone who isn't a registered voter.
We'll find somebody.
I hope so.
We'll recruit
I
somebody.
need somebody to work with on this.
All right, next on the agenda tonight, we have some minutes to approve from January 12th. Has everyone had a chance to review these minutes?
Yes.
Or do you want to take this up and vote on these tonight?
I reviewed it, I'm good.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve well, actually, before we do that, in attendance at that meeting was myself, Pete Benoit, Eric Chu, Sue Delgado, Bob Ferrara, Eric McGlynn, and Gail Rodericks. So I just wanted to clarify who was in attendance at that meeting. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those minutes pass. And next on the agenda is setting the next meeting date, which is next Wednesday, February 16th. And as I said earlier, we're going to be meeting with the police department and DPW next week. And then after that, the departments that we have left, that I have in front of me here, is town clerk, treasurer, board of selectmen, and they would all be coming in on the same night, which we tentatively had for March 2nd. And then we also had listed down as historical and tree warden. Now, I don't think the tree warden, that's, we're probably not gonna have to have them come in, I don't think. So historical would be considered like CPC funds, projects that would be taken up by them. So we could, I would think that we could have them come in with town clerk, board of selectmen, treasurer, and historical. We do that all in one night.
We're waiting for those articles.
Right, we are
now.
waiting for that stuff. So that's why that date hasn't been finalized yet. And then we'll have Old Colony, Fire Department, and EMS, which I had tentatively down for March 9th.
Yeah, and we're meeting with Old Colony tomorrow, Gail and
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Mm-hmm. 6 o'clock, Old Colony.
Oh, I'm meeting at noontime with the superintendent. I was gonna wonder if we were all gonna be eating sandwiches together.
So we're gonna have an open date on March 16th. Like I mentioned that, I would like to probably reserve that for us to review all the articles that come in, go over some more numbers that we'll have for us. And then we'll be meeting with the school the following week on the 23rd, and then on March 30th, we start our deliberations. Now, if things go pretty smoothly, we could possibly get all the deliberations done in that one night, instead of having to go into the next week, the first week, Wednesday in April, on April 6th.
If we can pregame on the 16th, yeah, I mean.
Right, exactly. And if things go pretty smoothly, and on the 16th, if we wanted to start voting on some of the budgets that we know we can, that are easy, we can start doing that right away on that night and get some of them done. And I think that might be a good idea to just get a jump on things, because time is of the essence as we get towards the end. There's deadlines. This is going to have to go out to print by a certain date.
It's at the 16th, right? March 16th, the
11th.
11th.
Well, March 11th, but then
That's the warrant closes, but
By then, nobody can add anything, right? There can't be any changes, there can't be any articles.
no one can add other than if, the typical placeholders, like where you are waiting for probably in the special within the annual for past bills, those type of things, past year, where you need the 90%.
So the only budget we're not going to hear prior to that date is our schools.
Yeah.
That's the last one. So we're going to be getting their presentation after that warrant deadline of March 11th.
Are we still vacant on the 23rd for school vacation? Nothing's changed, it's
We're actually going to meet with the school on that week.
on the 23rd?
On
The
March
Wednesday night?
23rd, yes.
No, this is February.
February 23rd, I'm sorry.
Oh, February, okay, yes.
February break.
2 weeks.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
I know we had that open as an emergency, it was just,
Yeah, I think that can stay open. I think we're, to be honest with you, I think we all will need a week off.
I thought you guys were all going to Disneyland.
yeah. I'd rather
Yeah.
be here at a meeting.
Super Bowl first.
So I think it's a consensus that we all want that week off,
Sure.
right? I think we need it.
With pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
If you meet, you want double time?
Yes, absolutely.
Motion to adjourn then, sir?
We have a motion to adjourn, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, this meeting is adjourned.